For the first time ever, the SEC Unfiltered Tour heads to Norman, and we are here previewing, predicting, and breaking down this weekend showdown between Oklahoma and Michigan. Hello, everyone. I'm Chris Phillips. He is Cole the Bear Thompson. Appreciate each and every single one of you tuning in. As always, make sure you like, subscribe, turn on notifications. Check us out via podcast, wherever you get your podcasts. You can also find us across all social media platforms, as well as our website, secunfiltered.com. And as always, we are powered by our friends over at FANDUEL. Visit FANDUEL.com/SECU to join today and get started with $250 in bonus bets when you win your first $5 bet. Once again, that's FANDUEL.com/SECU to get $250 in bonus bets today. The SEC Unfiltered Tour heads to Norman, Oklahoma for the first time ever. And boy, oh boy, do we have a dandy of a ball game awaiting us. Call it a helmet game, call it whatever you like, call it a high-impact game for the 2025 season for both of these clubs, because that's exactly what it is as Oklahoma and Michigan get set to do battle. We are here previewing, predicting, and breaking down this game. Hello, everyone. I'm Chris Phillips, as always. Joining me, as he always does, my partner in crime and one of the best in the business, Cole the Bear Thompson. Bear, what's going on, man? Appreciate you taking the time. Really excited to break down this one with you.
Listen, Bryce Underwood, we get to see Matir in action. Both had good debuts. Definitely some things you can work on if you're Michigan. Definitely some things you can work on if you're Oklahoma. But credit where credit's due. We're going to figure out a lot more about two teams that could make a run to the college football playoff. A lot of positivity coming out of Ann Arbor. A lot of positivity coming out of Norman. Who ends up having the better day at the quarterback position, and who's going to be that breakout star that we're talking about going into week 3. Those are going to be some key elements that we see. But Memorial Stadium, you get to welcome in the SEC Unfiltered crew. You get to welcome in true ambiance of what is college football Saturdays in the Southeastern Conference, and you get to go ahead and maybe make a statement toward your run to the college football playoff. All bets are off at this point when it comes to teams and who they are, where they stand in the pecking order. Let's see where you stand in the pecking order, Oklahoma. And let's see where you stand in the pecking order as well to Michigan. You had a lot of impressive plays, especially on the offensive side with Bryce Underwood underneath center. How's he going to handle it? Brett Venables' defense is going to be the ultimate question.
Yeah, Bear, the only apology I have for Oklahoma fans is I'm sorry that it took us this long to get out to Norman. But we got a lot of really fun stuff planned. I do want to obviously plug that for the weekend, doing a live on location show Thursday night with some Oklahoma folks. We'll be pushing that on social media. You guys will know exactly where we are, what we're doing. Hanging out with some of our friends over at The Ref all throughout the weekend. Going to be tailgating with them, sitting with them. It is going to be an absolute blast, and I cannot wait to get to Norman. And again, I'm sorry it took me this long to get out there, but certainly this first trip, Bear, I feel pretty confident saying it is going to be a memorable one, no doubt, one that I'm extremely fired up for. Bear, let's get into the game. This game obviously taking place Saturday night, September the 6th, 6:30 Central Time kickoff on ABC there in Norman at Oklahoma Memorial Stadium. Bear, Oklahoma, a 6.5-point favorite in this football game. The over-under set at 46.5. Series history, Bear, these teams have met just one time, which is kind of crazy to think about. And it feels like it's a little bit of a shame because, like I said, two of the most historic programs in college football, like this is a game where you look at, we talk about the helmet matchup, right? Like seeing that Michigan helmet, seeing that Oklahoma helmet, it's going to be absolutely awesome. But they've only met once before. Oklahoma leads the all-time series 1-0. And Bear, who can forget that classic back in 1975 when Oklahoma won by a score of 14-6 over the Wolverines. Bear, let's meet the 2025 version of the Wolverines, and definitely want to get your thoughts on Michigan. Their head coach, of course, is Sharon Moore. Had to do some digging, Bear, because I was curious, was this one of the games that he is suspended for? It is not. That is games 3 and 4. Chestnut checkers move, I feel like, by Michigan a little bit. Either way, Sharon Moore will be on the sidelines for this one. Of course, as we know, they went 8-5 a season ago, 5-4 in conference play. They did beat Alabama in the ReliaQuest Bowl. Obviously, this was following the national title that they won in 2023. Started their season, Bear, 1-0, beat New Mexico 34-17 in the season opener there in Ann Arbor. And their key contributors, of course, Bear, you mentioned it starts at the quarterback position, the young freshman, Bryce Underwood. I think we all, if you follow college football in any capacity, especially SEC football, then you know about his recruitment, the way it went down. Obviously, Michigan threw the bag at the kid, and they do land him. Obviously, a generational talent, and I think you and I both believe in what he is going to be up there for Michigan. Running back Justice Haynes, he had a big game in their first game. The Alabama transfer had a solid day against New Mexico. Defensively, they still have a lot of talent. They bring a lot back. It's led by their linebackers, Ernest Hausman and Jayshawn Barham, both seniors at those spots, and defensive end Derek Moore, the senior off of the edge. Bear, just curious before we dive into this game and this matchup, your thoughts on Michigan as a whole coming in the season. Obviously with them, the big storyline is Bryce Underwood and what he can bring to them offensively. Last year was a bit of a mess at the quarterback position. They were very inconsistent on the offensive side, had to lean on their defense. I think they feel like now they've got the guy under center that can provide a spark. Obviously got off to a good start at 1-0, and he had a solid debut. But thoughts on Michigan, your overall perception of them coming in this game?
I thought that they were going to be an 8-4 team. They very well still might, but it's largely due to the fact of we don't know what we're getting in Bryce Underwood. Bryce is not a question for me. He looked poised. He looked confident. He looked directive. I think the biggest thing is that you saw him play against, I wouldn't say an elite team because of New Mexico's nowhere near that, but they do have a really good coach in Jason Eck that came on in from Idaho, and he knows how to dial up schemes to make quarterbacks uncomfortable. He played with passion, but he also played with confidence. That's something that I think takes a little bit of time for any young player to accomplish, and you saw that from a quarterback that is living up to the billing of being that generational talent that is going to lead your team to the next level, back to the college football playoff, to a national title. He was very poised in the pocket, made a lot of direct and veteran decisions, 21 of 31, 251 yards, only found the end zone one time, but it was the way that he was able to conduct the offense. It didn't seem like this was somebody just brand new working inside a Chip Lindsey system. Felt like he had been there for a little while. And I don't mean like 8 months. I mean like 2 years. Really directive, very much a polished decision maker. Those are things that I think Oklahoma is going to have to look out for. But the rushing attack, we talked a lot about Justice Haynes at Alabama, what he was supposed to be, how disappointing he was at times last year. The only thing disappointing at this point was the play design of what we saw from Nick Sheridan in Tuscaloosa, because he looked awesome on Saturday. Over 150 rushing yards, 3 touchdowns, 9.9 yards play, and he only did it in 16 carries. So it's a very unique, balanced rushing attack. The other thing that we know about Michigan, they're always going to have great tight end play. Don't know what it is. Don't understand what the reasoning behind it is. But somehow, once again, goodbye Colston Loveland. Hello Marlon Klein. 6 catches, 93 yards, 15.5 yards of play. The wide receiver room is going to be really the deciding factor in this game. There's some questions going in with the wide receiver room. I don't think that we're going to see it hit its full stride by the time that we get out of this matchup. I don't know if we're going to see it hit its full stride by the time we get to October. But you do have guys like Channing Goodwin. You guys have guys like Shamaj Morgan. Donovan McCulley comes on in. They all had decent days throughout the year. Jordan Marshall as well you can throw into the conversation out of the backfield as a receiving threat. Kendrick Bell you can throw on in. There's a lot to like about where this offensive identity is. It just needs to, I think, come together. That will happen in time. What I'm going to be really interested in, if this offense is going to have to play a certain unique up-tempo brand of football, or better yet, milk the time of possession, because of there were some faults for Michigan's defense. I'm not saying it was a great game. I'm not saying it was a bad game. I definitely have seen better performances from Michigan, and Wick Martindale, he's going to be able to get the best version out of his players. However, you may have forced 3 interceptions against Jack Lane. You also allowed 208 passing yards through the year. You also were really inconsistent at times on third down. They went 5 of 14. They were 50% on fourth down conversions. They still were able to move the ball efficiently throughout the year. And again, these are things that you are going to think that can be corrected overnight. I just wonder about, can you get more pressure into the backfield? Can you add a little bit more validity in the secondary? Are you going to allow these explosive plays downfield? Because New Mexico, decent day. No receiver had over 70 receptions, but you did give up 4 plays of 10-plus yards downfield. So there's a good receiving room. It's a lot of unknown at Oklahoma, but it's a good receiving room that could put a lot of pressure on Michigan if they can't be able to complete it and be able to win those one-on-one battles, play that physical brand. However, you brought up, last season, we were talking so much of this defense. We were talking so much about what you had with Kenneth Grant and Mason Graham and what you had off the edge and that linebacker and in the secondary with Will Johnson. You don't have to have that conversation anymore. It feels like, and it's not to be disrespectful at all. So Michigan fans, whoever's watching, I'm not saying this to be rude, because if you are a big blue blood program, but it feels like we're talking Kirkland brand Walmart, but offensively switched, where LSU, Kirkland brand LSU, there we go. LSU need to get better defensively. They finally got the defense. Now their offense can kind of coast. Now you feel that way about Michigan's offense, to where the defense, it's allowing itself to have its kind of few mishaps, struggles here and there. you're okay with that because your offense can bail you out of trouble. They can put points on the board. It's going to be a really intriguing game in the trenches. It's going to be a really intriguing game in the backfield.
And Bear, I'm right there with you. I thought Michigan 8-4, 9-3 was kind of where I saw them, just depending on how quickly Bryce Underwood evolved and grew into his role as the starting quarterback there. We all know about the upside and the potential and, the talent, everything he can be, but obviously he's a young player. You want to have patience. It's going to take time. He did look good in his debut, granted, against New Mexico and that 34-17 win. Bears, we move into this game. I do want to start with this. Let's remove must win from our vocabulary for this, because I feel like that's a phrase we overuse, right, as college football fans. And people that talk about college football, we talk about games as must win, when really, unless it's an elimination game, it's not a must win.
Right.
But Bear, this one's very important. This one is really, really important for both sides, and I think especially for Brent Venables in this Oklahoma football program. We all understand what's on the line. We all understand the pressures Brent Venables is under. I don't think obviously beating Illinois State, the Redbirds in week 1, alleviates a whole bunch of that. It was a good start to the season. You're 1-0, as you should be 1-0. You need to win these kind of games, right? I think the expectations are very clearly laid out. From talking to Oklahoma folks now, I don't think 8-4 is good enough. I don't think they feel like it's good enough. And you're getting a young quarterback on your home field at night. You and I talked, and we debated this a few weeks ago, right, Bear? What's the most important game of the season? We talked about every single team. I think I may have mentioned the Auburn game. I think you may have mentioned this Michigan game. Either way, I think those were the two we kind of went back and forth. This one is absolutely pivotal when it comes to setting the right tone for your season. And hey, Bear, can I throw this out there? It's another big game for the SEC. Like, let's call it for what it is. This is a big game for the conference. Yet again, if you care about conference pride or like the reputation of the conference, if that's something that matters to you, right? We were in Columbus last weekend. SEC failed to come through. On the home field, in a home environment at night against an Oklahoma team that I think top to bottom we should be able to look at and say is better. This is a massive opportunity. And again, more importantly, maybe a massive opportunity for Oklahoma to get this thing going off on the right foot, set the stage and set the path, if you will, for what we think potentially could be a playoff run.
Remember, this is also the SEC versus the Big Ten. You're currently 0-1 against them this season with Ohio State. Regardless of how you feel about Texas, regardless of how you feel about Ohio State long-term, you're 0-1. That means something when it comes to the conference pride. Now, again, there are fans out there that are never going to care about any of that stuff. We here at SEC Unfiltered, because we talk about all 16 teams, we do care about that stuff. So that is a tone setter, and it's in your backyard. I went back and I watched the Oklahoma game. The offense felt very vanilla, felt very much like they were not trying to show anything. Very kind of beige, not trying to give any emphasis or any selling points or cheat codes to Michigan's defensive line in the Illinois State game. They're up 7-0 going into the second quarter. A couple of drops really early on were disappointing. And then they started to find their rhythm. Now, I want to see the explosivity. I want to watch if they are able to take those deep shots downfield and maybe not be afraid to let it fly a bit when it comes to Matir early in this game. Because if you want to set the tone, and more importantly, you want to control the tempo. Tempo is going to be such a big element of this matchup on both sides, whether it's slow and methodical for Michigan with the rushing attack, whether it's up fast and furious with Matir, his legs, his mobility, the passing attack, but it's massive in the terms of if you can win that tempo battle and force the other team to have to make those adjustments on the fly, you may be able to kind of coast and figure out we are the better team. Now we can show it, and now we can do our due diligence on backing it up on the field. I thought that Oklahoma, again, you look at Matir, 30-37, almost 400 passing yards, 10.6 yards a play. He also ran for another 24 yards, 4 touchdowns on the day if you include the rushing score. There's a lot to like about him. And Illinois State, yes, we can talk about Illinois State being an FCS program. They're a very good FCS program. Now, you shouldn't ever have struggles with an FCS program if you're at a place like Oklahoma, but credit where credit's due. It still is a team that can probably rattle up some things to make things intriguing going into the second quarter. They did, then Oklahoma kind of pulled away. You can't do that against Michigan. Even with all the questions that I have with Michigan in coverage, even with all the questions that I have with Michigan, how they're going to rotate their defensive line, how they're going to make up for the lost production of Kenneth Grant and Mason Graham. This is still a really good program that goes out, brings in the right recruits. They have a defensive coordinator that is known for his blitzing mentality with Wink Martindale. they could put pressure on John Matir very early on in this matchup. And in John Matir's sake, he could do damage against this secondary if he just allows it to let it fly. I'm going to be very intrigued to see the role of Jaden Ott, who barely played in Saturday's game. Now, I talked to somebody out in Oklahoma. They said it was so a precautionary thing. He had been dealing with an injury throughout all of fall camp. They really want to see what they had in Blaylock. They really want to see what they had in Xavier Robinson, Javonte Barnes. You still are going to need a Jaden Ott to be successful in this matchup if you want to walk away with a win, and a win that gets you also the ±6.5, the touchdown lead.
And I do want to start there, Bear. I mean, John Matir, that's, you hate to oversimplify, but this quarterback battle, but specifically I'm zeroing in on John Matir. I cannot wait to watch this dude in person. I can't wait to watch this dude, just period. But to get to see his game, he is one of those dudes in this league. Barry's a playmaker, right? Like, I mean, you look at what he did against Illinois State, you look at what he's done his entire career. The guy just makes big-time plays. And I feel like he's a dude built for this moment, built for a game like this, I should say. I'm expecting him to ball out and be a difference maker in this football game. I think it goes without saying. And his first big-time opportunity in an Oklahoma uniform to go out and show, hey, this is why I'm a top 3 or 4 quarterback in this league, top 3 or 4 quarterback in the entire country maybe. He does things that, again, get your popcorn ready. Like, get your popcorn ready when it comes to John Matir, because he's going to do different stuff. I do agree with you, too, by the way. The status of Jaden Ott, that is going to be something to follow throughout the week. Obviously, you're not going to push him in the first game against Illinois State. You know you can win that football game without him. I think it was smart they didn't. He was dressed out, but didn't really play in that football game. I would expect he will be a full go in this one. I mean, it'd have to be something very, very severe to hold you out of a game like this. So I think he will be good. But, Bear, getting a look at John Matir, his mobility, loved what he did in the passing game, obviously, against Illinois State. But I think both of these guys and their mobility, but John Matir's mobility specifically, I think it is going to be a big difference maker in this game against that front seven, against a really talented linebacking core. You're going to need to establish balance, and that's the other thing, Bear, just sticking with the offense. I know I'm kind of rambling, hitting all these points on the offensive side, but how does Oklahoma's offensive line fare in this one, right? Like, their first big-time test, respectfully to Illinois State, their first big-time test against a defensive line that is going to give them some challenges, right? It's going to present a challenge to them. So I'm really excited to see what this Oklahoma offense looks like, their first opportunity on a big stage to, it was times like this last year where they crumbled. They just completely fell apart on the offensive side. I am really excited. This is Ben Arbuckle, John Matir. Yeah, we're a game in the season, but this is kind of your debut. You're on national TV. You're in the national spotlight. Let's roll it out there. Show us it's a different Oklahoma. And I think they will do that, man. Like I said, I cannot wait to watch, because it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when the fireworks come from John Matir, and I got a good feeling they're going to be coming all night long.
They also, I think, are going to be really interesting in how they utilize the passing attack. Like, John Matir, he's the real deal. I think that even if it was against Illinois State, the fact that we saw the mobility, the confidence, the throws, the direct standpoint of being able to stand in the pocket and not miss a beat, being able to connect downfield, those are just traits that you aren't expected to see. And now that you have it, you have a good baseline of who this player is. But I want to know who are going to be those playmakers that are winning the one-on-one battles to kind of bail him out of trouble. And it doesn't have to be just a Keontez Lewis who had 2 touchdowns, or a Deion Burks. Maybe it's a name that we didn't talk about that much. Maybe it's Jaron Kanik. Maybe it's going to be Jacob Jordan, who had a 27-yard grab. Maybe it's going to be just Tyler Blaylock out of the backfield, or Xavier Robinson that you can just do a little shovel pass to, kind of set yourself up, get a new fresh set of downs. That'll be interesting to me, because I think that what we don't know on the opposing side is Bryce Underwood's mobility. Did not run him at all in the game against New Mexico. That does not mean he is not mobile. That does not mean that there are not design plays that could easily put themselves in a position to where you trust 19 to go ahead and get you 5 on the ground, fresh set of downs. And he keeps momentum moving. 4.5 yards allowed by this defensive line against Illinois State. You cannot afford to do that when you're facing off against a Justice Haynes and also a Bryce Underwood that has that X factor and the athleticism to win the behind the line of scrimmage, understand when you got to turn up field to be able to get those extra yards, just to put yourself in a manageable situation. On the opposing side, you don't have to worry about that with John Matir. But I want to know who is going to be that supporting cast around him. It's one thing to go up against an Illinois State. It's another thing to go up against a Michigan that still is going to have a defense filled with players that eventually will find their way to the Sunday game, even if they didn't look like it in week 1. Week 1, it's an overreaction week. Week 2, That's when we start to figure out the foundation of who you are as a program, what your identity is. You could show pretty early on. And I do think that if Michigan doesn't show its defense the way it did against Ohio State last year, the way it did at times against Alabama last year, the way it did at times in conference play, I think there was the Illinois game was one of those matchups. If it doesn't show in that capacity, it's going to be a long day, I think, for that secondary if you allow John Matir to strike. And John Matir can strike. I'm very excited to see what he does against a power forward defense. Because remember, a lot of people, including you, Chris Phillips, wanted to see, could he get the job done at a power forward level? You saw it against an FCS team. He would have done that at Washington State. What about now against a team like Michigan? Top 25 matchup. Can you deliver?
Yeah, I think that's a big question. I think that's something a lot of people are looking forward to and excited for. And I think that was or at least that was one of the questions Bear coming in is like, all right, he did it at Washington State against so-and-so and whoever and whatever else. But in the SEC, these type of matchups, fairly or unfairly, people are going to judge him how he plays on Saturday night. They're going to judge him off of that. So, again, this is his opportunity. Unveil the curtain. Take the stage. It is all yours. Take center stage, my friend. You got it. Bear, on the other side, really excited to see how Brent Venables, what his game plan is and how he attacks a young quarterback in Bryce Underwood. Obviously, I think you got to start by stopping the running game with Justice Haynes and putting it on him, putting him in some very obvious passing situations where Michigan has got to put the game on his shoulders, if you will. But I would expect Venables and company to be really aggressive. I think they're going to send the house at him. Watching R. Mason Thomas, Kip Lewis, Grayson Halton, Demonic Williams, those guys up front, I think they are going to be very, very active in the front seven. And Bear, I think that is the game plan, right? Like, I think you gotta force the issue, I think, with Bryce Underwood early. Hey, let's see if we can rattle this kid a little bit. Let's see if we can force a couple turnovers off him, get the football off him, build some early momentum, jump out to a multiple score lead. I don't think you sit back and allow him to settle into the game and get comfortable. That's at least what I would do. That's what I expect Brent Venables and company to do. But, I mean, hey, I'm the one sitting here talking defense and scheme, and there's nobody in the game. Arguably, there's few better in the game better than what a Brent Venables can do. For all the criticisms you may have about him and some of his other shortcomings, if you will, Brent Venables knows defense. I trust Brent Venables, Bear, in this spot to put together a really, really good game plan against, while a very talented quarterback, still a really young quarterback making his first ever start in an environment and in a game like this one.
My fear is that you're going to bail on the passing attack to try to stop the run. And you got to stop the run. I mean, like, whether or not you want to call it as is, Illinois State outrushed Oklahoma on Saturday. That's just the bottom line. They averaged 4.5 yards a play. And they did this with running backs that probably would maybe compete at the G5 level. You're going up against Justice Haynes, who showed you that he was worth the hype coming out of high school. He just was in the wrong system to allow him to be able to boot, scoot, and boogie. You got to see that on Saturday against New Mexico. So my fear is that we know Bryce Underwood has a cannon of an arm. We know that Bryce Underwood is very confident running this offense. If you start bailing and setting these stunts and setting these blitzes to be able to take away the run, all you have to do now is put a lot of faith in your secondary to win its one-on-one battles to then force that incompletion, a punt, and get the ball back to your offense. I'm not saying it's a way to win. What I am saying is my fear for a team like Oklahoma is that they're going to be so fixated on stopping Justice Haynes, stopping this rushing attack, play 8 in the box, not be afraid to go ahead and throw it down the middle of the line of scrimmage. That's going to create mismatches or open holes in the secondary to where even if you end up getting only 8 yards out of it, it's 8 yards to where now you're limited in 2nd and 2. Now you're putting yourself on a fresh set of downs. Now you get to watch as they run the time of possession. And maybe they'll take 2 plays off the clock, and then they go ahead and they take 2 minutes off the clock with it. So I'm not worried about Brent Venables' defense. In my opinion, he is one of the smartest men when it comes to any defensive formalities. He's always been one of the great schemers. There were times where you just watch, they took away the passing attack against Illinois State. And again, it's Illinois State, but when you get 34 passing yards in a game, you're doing something right. So I trust this secondary with guys like Peyton Bowen on the back end, which got the cornerback position, and they got a front 7. You already mentioned R. Mason Thomas. Maniac Williams is one that you got to throw in there. You also got to throw David Stone in there. They got good linebacking play, even though they lost Danny Stutzman. Kip Lewis is back for another year. I think they'll be in a good spot to where they can win their coverage battles if they don't just send the house. That is the one thing that you got to make sure. Properly timed blitzes and good stunts and delays that allow you to win at the line of scrimmage and get into the backfield without sending an extra linebacker just to go ahead and get the crushing blow. If you can do that, leave somebody out in coverage, Michigan is going to have to respond in ways that we didn't see on Saturday against New Mexico. And that might be a blessing for a team like Michigan. It may end up being the nail in the coffin. It very well could.
The chess match that is going to take place on Saturday night is going to be a legendary one, no doubt. Bear, that being said, let's lock in some picks. Let's lock in some predictions. Would you like the honors or would you like me to go first, sir?
I'll let you go first.
Okay, fair enough. First off, like I said, Bear, I can't stress it enough. Cannot wait to get to Norman, Oklahoma. Again, it took certainly long enough. This has been a trip, months in the making, if you will. We've got a lot of folks, a lot of Oklahoma folks that support us, support SEC Unfiltered. Cannot wait to come back down, show love, and really just take it all in. One of the most historic programs in college football. Like, I am truly giddy. I mean, Bear, literally driving back home from Columbus, all I could think about was, man, I cannot wait to get back on the road, go out to Norman, and hang out with all the great Sooners. To the game itself, I've kind of gone back and forth on the score a little bit, Bear, in regards to, because I think what's so interesting, we talk about how unpredictable week one is. Well, week two is kind of that same way because, you know, we hear the old adage, teams make their biggest jumps and their biggest improvements from week one to week two because coaches finally have tape. They have something they can look back at against an opponent. You can correct, you can make adjustments because it's really hard to do that, right? When you're going up against yourself, you just don't really know until you get out there against somebody else and you can see some of those live reps and that live action. So with that being said, this is a game, once again, a helmet game. Two storied programs in Oklahoma and Michigan. And like I said, Bear, this is a game, maybe it's not a must-win, but it is a need-to-win for Boomer Sooner. I think John Matir is going to do some crazy things Saturday night. I think he's going to put on a damn show. I think he's going to put out a highlight tape. I think he is going to be all over the field and at multiple times make you say, wow, I am buying in and drinking the Kool-Aid that is Oklahoma. It took me a while to come around on him, but you know what? When you got a guy like John Matir to center, and I hate to oversimplify a football game like this because Oklahoma's offensive line still gives me some concern. I think what the unknown of Bryce Underwood potentially maybe gives me a little bit of concern. But right now, I trust John Matir, his playmaking ability, Jaden Ott coming back for this football game. I trust what Oklahoma's got, and Brent Venables, still one of the best defensive masterminds in college football, scheming against a young freshman quarterback who's very talented, but still very young and unfamiliar with what an environment like this is for the Michigan Wolverines. Bear, give me Oklahoma to get what feels like to me a monumental win early in their season, get to 2-0, a big 2-0. The SEC beats the Big Ten. I got Oklahoma winning this game. Give me Sooners 27, Michigan 17. I love Oklahoma to cover the 6.5-point spread, whatever the spread was, or whatever the score you think will end up being. I do think Oklahoma will win this game, Bear, by double digits. I think it's on the backs of a couple turnovers forced. I do think they are going to rattle Bryce Underwood early. I think Oklahoma jumps out to a lead. John Matir with some highlight moments, of course, in this football game. But I think it's the Oklahoma defense getting after a young quarterback. That is the difference. Give me Sooners 27, Wolverines 17 in what's going to be an electric night at Memorial Stadium.
You are 100% right on one major thing. It's not a must-win game for either side. It isn't. And I have changed my tune on how I feel about Michigan's offensive personnel. I want to see it with the wide receiver room. I do. But you know what? I'm going to look at what Bryce Underwood has done and kind of feel content that as long as you get great play from the tight end spot and one receiver that steps on up, I think you'll be in a good position. I do. I think that's very fair to say. What I also know is that this is going to be a big moment for John Matir to be able to deliver in front of the hometown crowd. And more specifically, against people who doubted him making the transition over from the G5 level to the Power 4 competition. Still Michigan. It still is a great defense that will find its footing by some point when we get to October. May not be in week 2, but you look back and say how well that they've been playing, how well that they've responded since that week 1 game against New Mexico, how well they've responded after a win or a loss against Oklahoma. You'll see that team come together. You're going to have to trust the run game. You're going to have to get a healthy Jaden out in this matchup if you want to win. And you're going to need some breaks on the defensive line to be able to stop the run on the opposing side. But in my opinion, and it's something that I think is egregious, it is wrong. And I stand with Michigan fans on this one going into the preview right now, because we don't know what the answer is going to be in a couple days. But Jayshon Barnum, the linebacker, who was ejected for a targeting call and is going to miss the first half of this game, it is a travesty that is where we are in college football. Because if you want to look at that and call that a targeting call, you absolutely should not be a part of the game. You should not have any word on deciding factors. You should not be an official. If anything, the hit that we saw against Jacklin, that should be a roughing the passer at most. And now he's going to be penalized and not able to play in the first half of this game. And I understand it. It's frustrating if you're a Michigan fan. And it certainly is frustrating because I don't think that this will be a deciding factor, but it will have massive implications in the first half. It will allow John Matir to get more comfortable, building that rapport in the tight end room, building the rapport across the middle of the field, because Barnum played great. Barnum was one of the very few players that you could say had a very solid from start to finish game until he was ejected. And in my opinion, in a helmet game with must-see eyes and a first half to where you can set the tone because of this, if a suspension is upheld. And again, Jerome Moore's already said he's going to try to appeal it. And well, he should. But if Jayshon Barnum does not play, Jayshon Barnum does not play in the first half of this game. If Jayshon Barnum is out, I think Oklahoma is going to be able to jump out to a substantial lead going into halftime. He comes back, and it's just not going to be enough for Michigan. It just isn't. Because of one mistake made by officiating, it may end up being the reason why Oklahoma could set the tone. And I think Oklahoma will. I'm in 100% agreement with you. This is a moment where John Matir kind of shows the world, I'm here, I've arrived, I'm the quarterback that you needed to lead this program. I think Jaden Ott has a good day. I think that you will see the rushing attack of Michigan get after the defensive line early, but I think that you'll get a critical stop. And the bottom line, Bryce Underwood may be a star in the making, but Brent Venables is a veteran that's been here before. And he's gone up against young quarterbacks, and he's gone up in these signature games as a play caller defensively, and he's come out on the other side unscathed. Oklahoma wins this football game. Oklahoma, I think, wins this football game soundingly. I think that even if you get a backdoor cover, it still never feels like that the game is in doubt or jeopardy from the Sooner side. And I agree with you. As much as I want to believe that we are going to see Bryce Underwood end up a superstar, it just will not come at Memorial Stadium on Saturday night. It simply won't. I got a final score of 27-14. I think the agreeance, they cover. They are able to win by double digits. And I think a very good first half, knowing that one of the star players for Michigan's defense being out, allows you to feel content going into the third and fourth quarter. Where if you don't end a drive with a touchdown or a field goal, it's okay. Trust your defense to get that stop, get the ball right back to you, deliver on the next one. I believe this is going to be a very fun game. 27-14 final score.
So you and I both going with the Oklahoma Sooners to get a big win. Guys, we'd love to hear from you. Who's your pick, Oklahoma or Michigan? Do you agree with us? Do you disagree? We'd love to hear your thoughts. Who comes out on top at Memorial Stadium on Saturday night? Guys, that's going to do all for us. Appreciate each and every single one of you tuning in. Before we get out of here, I do want to tell you about our friends over at FanDuel, because as always, we are brought to you by our friends at FanDuel. And guys, FanDuel's getting you ready for the NFL season, which starts Thursday, by the way. How exciting is that? They're getting you ready for the season with an offer you won't want to miss. New customers can bet just $5 and get $300 in bonus bets if you win. That's right. Pick a bet $5, and if it wins, you'll unlock $300 in bonus bets to use all across the app. You can build parlays, you can bet player props, you can ride the live lines. Whatever your style, FanDuel has you covered. The NFL season's almost here. The only question is, are you ready to play? Visit FanDuel.com/SECU to download the FanDuel app today and get started. Once again, that's FanDuel.com/SECU to get yourself in the game today. Guys, once again, we appreciate each and every single one of you tuning in. Make sure that you like, subscribe, turn on notifications. Check us out via podcast. Wherever you get your podcast, you can also find us across all social media platforms as well as our website, secunfiltered.com. For Cole the Bear Thompson, I'm Chris Phillips. Appreciate each and every single one of you tuning in, and we will catch you all on the other side.